Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today I'm going to be doing a Meklord deck profile. So you guys have been requesting this one like crazy on the channel, and I finally got the cards in the mail for this one, Jinzo, and Ra, and so all three of those will be on the channel very, very, very soon. And I'm excited to bring you guys this deck because this deck is probably one of the most crazy OTK-based decks that I have seen in a long time, and it doesn't even really need an extra deck, which is really amazing. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon in the description below, because we have some awesome rewards you guys, like getting your name description for every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, or even getting to request a deck profile just like this one every single month that you're a patron, along with test hand. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. And I have to tell you guys, this is probably the most budget of all three of the particular decks between Ra, Jinzo, and Meklord in the new Legendary Duelist Rage of Ra. So let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're playing 3 copies of Meklord Astro Dragon. This card is really, really, really good. You have to banish 3 Meklord monsters with different names from your graveyard, which is not that big of a deal for this deck to do. And then once per turn, when this card declares an attack, you can look at your opponent's extra deck and equip 1 monster from it to this card, and this card gains attack equal to the combined original attack of those monsters' equipped monsters. And then while equipped with a synchro monster, this card can make up to 3 attacks on a monsters during each battle phase, which is really good. This card's really interesting as well because you can take cards out of your opponent's extra deck like Dragoons. It can take any extra deck monster. It can take Dragoons, Anaconda. It can take stuff that's really pivotal that to your opponent's plays like Dante's if you're playing against Burning Abyss, or the Rusty Bardige if you're playing against Phantom Knights. This card can be really, really, really potent, not getting really big, but taking the exact card that you need out of your opponent's extra deck to get it out of play. We then play 2 copies of Meklord Emperor Weissel. Emperor Weissel can negate a spell card once per turn, which is really, really helpful for this deck, and is probably the most recognized Meklord out of them all, in my opinion, because it was the first one I believe I ever saw. But what this card does is it can't be normal summon or special summon. It must be special summoned by its own effect and cannot be special summoned by other ways. There are cards that ignore summoning conditions, which makes it easier to get this card out. But when a face-up monster you control is destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand. And other monsters you control cannot declare an attack. And then once per turn, you can target 1 synchro monster your opponent controls and equip to this card. And this card gains attack equal to the attack of the monster equipped to this card, which is pretty good to be able to just increase the attack of this monster by a given amount, and it's probably one of the biggest level 1 monsters in the entire game, sitting at 2,500. We then play a single copy of Meklord Emperor Weissel Synchro Absorption. This card is just a good one-of in the deck. It's overall a really good card, but you just need 1 copy of it, because it cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned by its own effect, and then during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can send 1 face-up Meklord monster you control to the graveyard to special summon this card from your hand. You only use its effect once per turn, and then if this card is special summon card you control, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, and it cannot attack for the rest of the turn. And then when a card or effect is activated that would destroy cards on the field, then you contribute this card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. It's a good one-of, but you don't need it at any more than 1. I love that they showed it as having Stardust Dragon as the absorbed monster. That's really cool. We play 2 copies of Meklord Emperor Granal. Granal is basically a big beat stick and gains attack points equal to half of your life points, which is pretty good. I like this card. It has the same summoning requirements as Emperor Weissel. All the Emperors share the same ability that if a monster is destroyed by a battle or by card effect and sent to the graveyard, then you can special summon to your side of the field. And it gains attack points equal to half your life points. And then also it has the ability that you can target 1 face-up equipped monster and special summon that target to your field in defense position, which is pretty good. I like that effect. It helps out a lot to be able to target a synchro monster your opponent controls and equip this card, and then be able to special summon it and use it as link materials. We then play 3 copies of Meklord Army Deployer. This card is really, really, really good, and a card that the deck really needed to even function, because during your main phase you can activate the effect to destroy this card, and if you do, you special summon up to 2 Meklord Army monsters from your deck in defense position, except another copy of itself. And also you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of turn except machine monsters, which is not that big of a deal for this deck because you're mainly just summoning machine monsters anyways. And if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can activate the effect during the end phase of the turn. You can inflict 100 points of damage to your opponent for each Meklord monster you control. Not that great of an effect, but getting those 2 army monsters on your side of the field is really helpful. We then play 3 copies of Meklord Nucleus Infinity Core. Infinity Core is really, really, really good. Nucleus is like one of the best new cards that they released as a starter, because this card, the first time it would be destroyed by battle each turn, it is not destroyed, and then it has the ability that if this card is normal or special summon, you can add a Meklord spell or trap from your deck to your hand, which is always going to usually be Meklord Assembly. Which then it also has the ability that if this card is destroyed by a card effect, you can special summon a Meklord Emperor monster from your hand or deck with a different attribute than the monsters you control, ignoring its summoning conditions. And also the rest of the turn, you cannot declare attacks except with one monster. Not that big of a deal, because if you summon Grenald, it comes out at 4k, which is pretty nice. We then play 2 copies of Meklord Army of Weissel. Army of Weissel is pretty good because it gains 100 attack for each Meklord monster on the field, except itself, and then it also has the ability that when another Meklord monster you control declares an attack, you can make that monster inflict piercing damage. We play 2 copies of Meklord Army of Grenald. Grenald is pretty good too because this card gains 100 attack for each Meklord monster on the field, and it can half the attack of a monster on your opponent's side of the field when it is normal summon. Then we play 2 copies of Meklord Emperor Skeel. Skeel is pretty good because it gains 200 attack for each face-up Meklord monster, but the really good effect is when this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a Meklord Army monster from your deck, which can get you full circle back to your deployer, which is pretty nice. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom as well, just to round out the monsters, to help stop your opponent from doing all sorts of shenanigans while you're trying to get your Astro Dragon out on your side of the field to OTK your opponent. So, that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Monster Reborn, just as a good extender to be able to play through multiple negations and stuff like that, to be able to get out our copy of our Deployer back from the graveyard to be able to use it again. We play a single copy of 1 for 1. 1 for 1 is really helpful to get out Nucleus from the deck to be able to get it directly to your side of the field. 1 copy of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave just stops hand traps, which is super helpful. 2 copies of Limiter Removal. The Limiter Removals come in really, really, really handy because they just boost up your machine monsters by double and be able to help OTK your opponent. We then play 3 copies of Meklord Assembly, which is a really, really, really good card. This card lets you, when this card is activated, you get to add a Meklord monster from your deck to your hand, which already, it being a searcher, is amazing. And then it also has the ability that you can only use the following effect of this card once per turn. You can discard a card and then target a monster you control and destroy it. Wait a minute, that doesn't sound that good. Well, it is, because you can use this card to destroy Nucleus, and the Nucleus gets its effect to activate, which is pretty good. And then if you have a Meklord in your hand, you can special summon it, which is really good. Then, if a face-up Meklord monsters you control is destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can target one other face-up spell and trap on the field and destroy it. So it's also MST as well, which is pretty good. We then play 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance because we really don't care about the extra deck all that much. So you do play the 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance in this deck. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we are playing just a few traps in here. We're first off playing a single copy of Meklord Astro the Eradicator. Meklord Astro the Eradicator is pretty neat. Lets you target 3 Meklord monsters with different names in your graveyard, and you add them back to your hand or special summon them, ignoring their summoning conditions. Then until the end phase of the next turn after this card was activated, you cannot special summon monsters except for machine monsters. Again, not that big of a deal. The majority of the stuff we're summoning is machines. And if you control a Meklord Astro monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard to destroy a Synchro monster your opponent controls, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the original attack of that monster, which is pretty good. We then play 2 copies of Torrential Tribute. I just played it 2. You can play it as a 41 card deck and put in another copy of Torrential. I like the Torrential because it can catch our opponent off guard, and it helps with our copies of our Meklord monsters. When they're destroyed, then you can special summon out the Emperors, which is really nice to be able to get those monsters out from your hand onto your side of the field. And then we play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence just to be able to stop our opponent's different plays from happening and negating monster effects, which is super helpful to break boards. You can use this card to really help out by negating stuff like Anaconda when they're going for a Dragoon, or you can use this card to negate a really powerful monster on your opponent's side of the field when you're trying to go in for your Astro Dragon to OTK your opponent. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're playing 3 copies, because it's an extravagance build, we're playing 3 copies of number 27, Dreadnought. This card is really insane. for this deck, because it can get out a Juggernaut Levy, or not Juggernaut Levy, but a Gustav Max to help burn your opponent down for the rest of the damage that you particularly need. At the end of the battle phase, if this destroyed an opponent's monster by battle, you can special summon from your extra deck one rank 10 or higher Machine XYZ monster by using this card you control as a material, which is the big card effect of this card. And the other really cool thing about this is you can only use the effect of this card once per turn, and if a face-up card on the field would be destroyed by a battle or by card effect, you can detach a material from this card instead if you want to save some of your monsters. We then play 2 copies of Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max, which you can overlay on top of the copy of number 27. Now, I do have another alternative suggestion for you guys if you want to play it instead. You can play 2 copies of Super Quantum Mech King Great Magius if you want to play this instead of the Juggernaut Levy, if you don't feel like you need it to OTK. This card helps you by getting a card from once per turn during the end phase. You can detach a material from this card and then shuffle one monster or one card on the field into the deck, which is pretty good to be able to just get rid of a card. So it depends on which one you want to play. I like the copy of Gustav Max to burn my opponent for the additional 2,000, which is super helpful to me to just help me get in for that OTK. We then play 2 copies of Heavy Armor Train Iron Wolf. Iron Wolf is good in this deck too, because it can help you attack your opponent directly with a copy of the Astro Dragon. Because once per turn, you can detach a material from this card to target a machine monster you control. This turn, you can attack your opponent directly, which is really, really, really good. Other monsters you control can't attack, which is not a big deal. And if this card in your possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, then you can add 1 level 4 machine monster from your deck to your hand, which is the Army Assembly, which is pretty good. We then play 2 copies of Giganta X. Giganta X just kind of helps us search the deck for the exact machine monster that we need to get Nucleus and get the armies out of our deck. 2 copies of Platinum Gadget. Platinum Gadget is really good in this deck too, because it helps you get your Meklords to the graveyard to be able to go for Astro Dragon, because you have to have 3 or different Meklords in your graveyard to banish, which is pretty good. And it also has the ability that you can special summon 1 level 4 or lower machine monster from your hand to a zone this card points to, which can be really helpful. 2 copies of Union Carrier just to help get other cards out of the deck to be able to go into to boost up your copies of your monsters, and just is overall a really good card in this deck. And then the only machine monster that we play in this deck that really helps out is 2 copies of Link Rebo. The Link Rebos help out a lot in this deck because you can use this card with Nucleus to go in for a Link Rebo and then use Nucleus's effect if you need to later. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a relatively budget deck. I will mention, you guys, if you don't want to play the Pot of Extravagance, there is an alternative option to make the deck more budget. Really quickly, I will share that with you, how to make this deck budget. If you want to drop out these, you can play 3 copies of Effect Veiler, and the only other really expensive card is the copy of Pot of Extravagance, which you can drop for 3 copies of Supply Squad. Supply Squad makes the deck really budget because that card is like 50 cents, I think, maybe. And you can put 3 copies of Supply Squad in here, and every time a monster you control is destroyed, you get to draw a card, which is a card that I almost actually put in over the Extravagance, but I just threw the Extravagance in because I had it. Either or works for this deck, but I still probably wouldn't change the extra deck all that much because it's just overall not really needed. So that's it for this deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell next so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely tell me what you think of this deck down in the comments down below, because it's a really, really fun deck to play around with. And I'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.